Hello, Blenders, and welcome to episode number 241 of ReelBlend, a podcast that sounds best when streamed on Pandora. My name is Sean O'Connell, the managing editor here at Cinema Blend, and on this week's show, we're going to talk about the Golden Globes, which has their nominees being announced, and of course, we are going to review James Cameron's Avatar, The Way of Water, and by we, I mean Kevin McCarthy of Fox 5 in Washington, D.C. Hello, Kev. How are you?
Good afternoon. Funny enough, I used to stream music on Pandora, literally. Like that was like my old streaming format back before
of course,
Spotify and all that stuff. So it is strange.
You say it's old, but I still kind of use it.
I still use
regular.
It.
Yeah.
I mean,
I still use it.
The good thing about Pandora is you could find music that was unobtainable.
Unobtainium? Nah, it's okay. It's an improvement.
I haven't thought about the streaming platform Pandora in so long that you said that, and I went, "Are we on Pandora?" We are. I confirmed. We are.
You're not in Kansas anymore, but you are on Pandora. Yeah.
That's Gabe Kovach, the producer, who is leapfrogging over Jake Hamilton of Fox 32 in Chicago. Hi, Jake.
Well, we were just joking about this, but in true Avatar fashion, I feel like I should do a digital video, stare into the screen, and explain 45 minutes of information that you need to make sure that we progress into. That's actually a joke because I feel like I'm the one person that didn't mind the scene that we're making fun of.
That's a bit of a joke, yes. And we're Gabe is hopefully going to see Avatar: The Way of Water as soon as we were done recording this. So when we get later on in the show and we do the review section, we're going to have a full-on spoiler-free where we're going to give our thoughts about the sequel, what we thought of it, and then we will make a note and then mention stop listening now if you want to go into it clean, and then we'll discuss a few spoilers, but nothing significant. It's not like that type of movie necessarily. So if you're watching us on YouTube, hello, thank you for being with us. As always, the episode drops every Friday. The notification crew shows up at youtube.com/ReelBlend podcast. Thank you everybody who has subscribed to us this year. We reached our goal of 10,000 subscribers and we're pushing on. Of course, you can get us all the different places where you get your normal podcast needs met. And if you signed up for ReelBlend Premium, well, on Mondays, we have a bonus episode that drops where we do some really fun games. I think we're doing this one.
We yell a lot
next time. Yeah, often. But we also laugh a lot, Jake, don't we? Like a family. Just have a good time on the premium show. We're gonna
actually love the premium episodes. No joke.
We should just rename it "Jake Always Wins."
Yes.
No, I feel like you guys have been on fire lately. I feel like Kevin, you had a couple of episodes where you came out the winner, and the kid's been on fire.
Well, Pop and the kid, like Poppenheimer.
That sounds like the worst 60s Western ever.
Or the best.
Pop.
I beg to differ. Yeah, there's a couple of characters that you meet over on the premium side that don't often get to show up in the main show.
Those are Sean's avatars.
They
exist
played
over
by the same actor.
Right.
Yeah, like Mike Myers situation.
Like Sigourney Weaver playing two characters in the Avatar universe.
In addition to the episode, you get a ad-free version of the main show and an extra newsletter that gets sent every other week. So that's coming up very, very soon. All right, let's get into the Golden Globe nominations. They dropped the morning that we are recording. We're recording on Mondays right now. I know you guys won't hear this until Friday. And then there's another group that's dropping. The Critics' Choice is going to drop their awards. The three of us are members of the Critics' Choice Association, and our awards are going to get nominated on Wednesday.
We sent in our ballots. We sent in our ballots this past weekend, which I thought was cool.
We did. Yeah. So
I always love doing that.
Just every slot, I just put Finch.
Can't still put
also,
Finch.
Who's making fun of me about Finch through the ReelBlend Twitter account?
I don't know.
Wait, was Finch this year?
No, it was last year. But love doesn't go by the calendar.
True. Well, Otto's got
someone's making fun of me through the ReelBlend Twitter account about Finch, and I won't stand for it.
Yeah, I don't know who that is.
I don't even know who's running
my mom.
Twitter
My mom runs it. Yeah. My mom runs it.
Someone tweeted today that for the 12th year in a row, the Boston Film Critics Society named Ben Affleck's The Town their best film of the year. And I'm not mad about that, actually. It's not a bad choice. All right, so looking over the list, let me read I'll read the best picture for musical comedy and then best picture drama, and then we can get into any kind of surprises or notable momentum that you guys might have spotted. So first, musical comedy. They went with Babylon, The Banshees of Inisherin, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Glass Onion, A Knives Out Mystery, and excuse me, Triangle of Sadness. In the best motion picture drama category, Avatar: The Way of Water snuck in there. Elvis, The Fabelmans, Tar, and Top Gun Maverick. So
Damn right.
I guess Elvis feels like Elvis and Top Gun and Fabelmans and Everything Everywhere All at Once feel like the ones that they're the Oscar contenders, right? Like they're the ones that'll be in Best Picture. Like the Globes are tough because of the way they divide up the categories.
Yeah.
But like those four getting recognition here make me think that they are pretty much locks to continue on over into the Best Picture category.
Baz getting director. Like, do we think Baz getting director is going to carry all the way into the Oscars?
I do. The Academy seems to love that movie, and again,
I'm not mad about it. I mean, he directed the hell out of that movie.
I mean, I would personally put Jordan Peele in that list, but I know he's unfortunately hasn't had that type of traction. Maybe it will. We'll see. I think it deserves
I'm
it.
loving the buzz that Keke Palmer's getting.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that, I mean, obviously, I think Michael Abels will get in for score. Hopefully, Hoytema gets a DP nomination. It's interesting. This list is fascinating to me because right now, I feel like the Oscar race always changes, and I always, when I'm talking about the Golden Globes, I always just talk about it in connection with what the Oscars are going to be. And I know we're going to break this down once we dive into our awards sections of our show over the coming months, but. Looking at this list right now, I feel like Everything Everywhere All at Once is the front runner for picture. I really think Key's going to take supporting actor. He obviously got his supporting actor nomination for.
He's been hitting all of them up to this point,
but and well deserved. And when
he kind of feels like this year's Troy Kotsur.
And if you listen to our interview with the Daniels. Just learning that they shot the fanny pack scene in 1.5 days basically is just a testament to his ability. I want to see him get on stage. I want to see Kwan take that award. I really do. I think he's just absolutely incredible as a performer in that film. But right now it's interesting. I feel like Everything Everywhere All at Once is becoming. This is interesting. I saw something today on Twitter. That was like, is this year going to be Avatar versus Everything Everywhere All at Once? Which kind of reminded me of large, huge budget Avatar versus smaller budget Hurt Locker, right? And I think, and again, I'm not comparing Hurt Locker at all to Everything Everywhere All at Once, but from a budget perspective, I don't know what their exact budgets were, but I would imagine that they're in a similar space of money. I don't know for sure, but compared to Avatar, like that's kind of the comparison. So. I kind of started thinking about that because obviously Hurt Locker ended up taking picture and director, I believe that year. And so I could see like Avatar, I could see that kind of being the battle in a weird way. But I don't know. Banshees seems to be, I think it was the most nominated out of the bunch.
Yeah, it's the most nominations since Cold Mountain in 2003. 8 nominations.
Gem.
It's such a wonderful film. Banshees
is an amazing. Do not compare Banshees to Cold Mountain.
Also, Banshees shouldn't be in comedy. We get into this discussion every single year. That movie, I found it funny at times, but like that movie is.
I thought drama. Everything Everywhere All at Once in comedy was a little strange to me.
And actually, to me, I actually think that belittles it a little bit. I think it.
And is Babylon's in comedy?
How is Babylon a comedy? That movie.
Oh, what a laugh a minute.
Musical.
There's nothing musical about that.
It has
music in it.
Heavily by
it has
score.
A joke in it.
Wouldn't you argue Elvis should be a musical comedy?
Yeah, I actually thought Elvis was going to be a musical movie.
That's a drama.
They just do that so they can invite more people.
Let me clue you in on
just another category.
Yeah, a little something about the Globes. They're a fraud. And so their categories don't mean a whole heck of a lot.
Well, do they choose or does the studio choose?
They choose. I've heard over the past couple of days. They make a finite decision and let their membership know, and then they go from there.
Yeah. It's interesting. Banshee's getting all those nominations. Not that the Globes, I believe, have any indication specifically later on what will happen, but I'm happy to see that film getting the recognition it is. And I think Mark McDonagh is just obviously, he's an incredible filmmaker. I think it's the best movie he's made since In Bruges. And I liked Seven Psychopaths. I really did like 3 Billboards, but In Bruges was that film that like blew me away and kind of got me to be a fan of his. But this one is, to me, and I think right now we're looking at an Oscar race of three people. I think right now it's going to be Austin Butler versus Brendan Fraser versus Colin Farrell.
Yeah, a lot of people are looking at Farrell.
People like Colin Farrell, and you could almost. I still believe that Butler is kind of.
Yeah, Banshees is going to get screenplay. They'll get a screenplay, and that's it.
Oh, I think you're sleeping on Colin Farrell.
And I also think Carrie Condon could get supporting actress.
I'm not necessarily sleeping on him. I just think the other two are so strong. I think. First off, I think
people don't like The Whale, dude. People do not like The Whale.
I'm really perplexed by that. We live in a world where like film Twitter and real world are obviously two different things. But The Whale was one of the most incredibly emotional experiences I've ever had in a theater. And I think it's one of the greatest performances I've ever seen by an actor. Ever. And then to see the negativity for this film online this weekend, I was just like, wait a second, where is this all coming from? Why are people? And then I read some think pieces and I get it.
You know where it's coming from. It's coming from film Twitter. That's it.
But I will say this.
Honestly, all it's coming from.
To give that side just a bit of credit, like in terms of like the articles and opinions that I've read, there are people who have made like interesting points about the way the film deals with the drama and the obesity aspect of it, and kind of the way it's centered around that. So I understand that people may have different perspectives. I just don't see the negativity that they're seeing. I walked out of that film with the most beautiful, life-affirming message about people being amazing and humanity and love and I don't know. To me, I didn't see what the opinions are seeing, but you know, that's everybody else's opinion. We all have different views. So
I agree with you, though.
If you're new here, we notably did not put a lot of weight on Rotten Tomatoes for a litany of reasons, which I won't get into. Sure. But to your point, with 135 critical reviews, it's 68%. The user reviews are still, audience score is still coming in. There's less than 50 verified ratings at the moment, but it's at 94%.
That's interesting.
So to Sean's point, you're reading film Twitter probably a lot. Yeah.
True, but I've seen, but people have been writing like legit articles, and I get it. I just don't see the
film Twitter writes articles. Yeah.
You gotta remember that more often than not, people who are writing those articles, and I'm not trying to throw a blanket statement, but more often than not, they go into that with their mind made up of what their opinion is going to be, and then they find the elements in those movies to back up what they already went in looking to believe. And maybe my interpretation of the film is wrong, but I do not believe that Darren Aronofsky made a film that was malicious toward that character.
I do not see that at all. In fact,
quite the opposite. Exactly, quite the opposite. And so I don't put a lot of stock in those. But even with that, even with people saying they didn't like the movie, we've seen plenty of opportunities of movies that don't take off, and the performances are so good that they transcend the film. I'm trying to think of a good example. I can't really think of one right now.
Another example of that is like even this year, the Sun has been ripped apart, but Jackman got a Best Actor nomination.
True. Yeah, very true. I want to touch on the directors really fast. Oh, sorry, Kev. What were you gonna say?
No, I was gonna say this is the same organization that nominated The Tourist, so we have to be careful.
But to their credit, I'm not gonna sit here and like wave the flag for the Hollywood Foreign Press Association by any means, but they did add 100 members. They doubled their membership, added 100 members from outside of the United States. So I do think it is a different organization, just by nature of the membership. It is a different organization than the ones who infamously, I don't think we'll ever let them forget that, nominated The Tourist for Best Picture.
Yeah.
Here are your directors, and tell me if you think that this is going to be the Oscar directors category. It's James Cameron, Avatar: The Way of Water. It's the Daniels for Everything All at Once, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Baz Luhrmann for Elvis, Martin McDonagh for The Banshees of Inisherin, and Steven Spielberg for The Fabelmans.
The only person I keep thinking is going to sneak his way in for the Oscar, and I don't know who it's going to be instead of. I lean toward Baz Luhrmann. I really think Todd Field gets in for Tar. Because Tar is such a critic's darling, and it feels like every critic's list or top 10 or whatever I'm seeing is naming Tar, and I could see him big. Because don't you feel that whenever the director list comes out, there's always like one person that sneaks in that hasn't been there for the rest, and I feel like Todd Field could be this year, and which is why I asked you guys about Baz Luhrmann earlier. I feel like he could be the person that doesn't make it into the list.
I think Baz does, because this film, again, film Twitter. But from what I've seen from the screenings, that they've been having, it's been like a very positive. People love this film. I mean, at the end of the day, the idea of, and again, I'm not comparing Baz Luhrmann and James Cameron, but James Cameron and Baz Luhrmann are very good examples of what a director does with style for their film. Like in terms of, I mean, Baz Luhrmann directed the hell out of that film. I mean, and I don't think it's like a perfect movie by any means, but I do believe that from a direction standpoint, that speaks so, like Martin McDonagh's voice is completely part of Banshees. Like
where's Damien? Damien should be in the mix then.
Damien's not getting in.
I love Babylon, but I don't think it's strong enough on the font to be one of the 5. And I think it's a great film. And don't get me wrong. I mean, we'll get to that review later on when we talk about it. It's one of my favorite movies of the year. But I'm thinking, I think that list is going to be accurate. I did look up the numbers, by the way. I made a point about 5 minutes ago about like how I think Everything Everywhere All at Once will be like the quote unquote lower budget versus the massive Avatar. So Everything Everywhere All at Once was about a $25 million budget. Hurt Locker was a 15. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with that. And I could see that being a thing. But in terms of this is fascinating. I mean, you guys know me. I wish Jordan Peele was part of this conversation. I really feel like people really turn their heads towards that movie.
I don't think Nope is an awards movie.
Why?
I honestly don't think.
But what's the difference between like Nope is a movie about movie making and filmmaking and just as every movie this year, Babylon and Fabelmans and Nope. I mean, Nope has the most to say.
I think the driving narrative about Nope for people who aren't as invested in it as you are, because you clearly love it with Jordan, is that they see it more as a monster movie, and even when people said like, oh, it's Jordan's Jaws, right? There's more about what's in the clouds, and there's more about the eventual reveal, which I'm going to protect in case people haven't talked about it here. Or
I think it's thematically deeper than that, though. I really do.
I understand that, but I think that most people who are watching it are not getting the resonant message that you're getting from it, and so they're not treating it like an awards film necessarily.
Okay, then to your point, what about Kaczynski? Because that is a movie they're treating like an awards film.
For sure. Right. That seems like a different case. Like
that's
that just
cultural,
seems like
that's a big, like that was a cultural phenomenon, that film.
And that's getting the narrative, even though it's not 100% the movie, of the movie that brought people back to the movies.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
It did do that a lot, but like Tenet kind of did that. And then the MCU kind of did that because Doctor Strange made, $1 billion before Top Gun opened. No Way Home absolutely did that, and that's what.
But even though No Way Home made more than Top Gun, don't you feel like? I mean, I know we use our parents a lot as like the bar, but like, don't you feel like Top Gun had like, if there were ever a movie to slap the title of this brought people back to the theaters, even though No Way Home made more money, Top Gun feels like the one. Like honestly, Top Gun had the narrative that I really think Nolan thought he was going to have with Tenet or wanted to have with Tenet.
Now, granted, Nolan did release Tenet in a really bad part of the pandemic.
Different world.
But in terms of Top Gun Maverick, I mean, like it makes me happy to see it in this conversation, and it deserves to be. Like at the end of the day, like I've been saying this on the show for years, we are in a situation where we need to start celebrating these larger films that are actually bringing people to theaters instead of, again, I understand what an Oscar film may be to the Academy, like that a certain type of drama, Shakespeare in Love or English Patient, great films, but there is a standard as to what an Academy film really ends up becoming. And I think with films like Top Gun and Avatar and even like, Elvis, even though those are large scale films that might not necessarily be considered quote unquote Oscar films, that I'm just glad are being included in the bunch. And they're great movies. Like they're just because they're action films or don't follow a certain level of drama, like, like XYZ. I think that it's great to see that. I think Top Gun has a good chance.
I think one, I'm curious as to your thoughts on, because I still think Cruise is getting in. I know he didn't get the Best Actor slot. We were texting earlier about whether or not this was punishment for him giving back his Globes after everything that happened. Do you think that Cameron getting in as director is kind of like if there were one slot for the director of a big blockbuster, like they're not going to do Kaczynski and Cameron, and they're going to give it to Cameron over Kaczynski.
Well,
but I would argue, and Cameron deserves it over Kaczynski.
I heard from a very trusted source that there were two cuts of Top Gun Maverick. the Kaczynski cut and the Macquarie cut.
Which one did we
And
see?
the Macquarie cut is the one that we saw.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
That feels like a big scoop to drop on ReelBlend. What have you heard?
I've heard it from a trusted source that Macquarie has more fingerprints on Top Gun Maverick than Kaczynski might.
Well, I mean, I honestly kind of always felt that Cruise probably had more fingerprints on it than Kaczynski had.
Those projects do feel very much like there's a lot of input from a lot of different directions. Bruckheimer's going to have his say. Cruise absolutely is going to have his say. He's got Macquarie by his side for sure as a consultant. And I don't doubt that Joseph Kaczynski brought plenty to the film. I mean, obviously, he's a terrific director, but I didn't think he was going to be in the director's category.
Neither did I.
Regardless, it just felt like, because once you have Spielberg, who's definitely going to be in. I think Martin McDonagh is in.
Yeah.
I think Baz is a lock.
You think Baz is a lock?
I think Baz is a lock. I think Elvis
They
is very
love that
popular.
movie. Yeah,
What
they
about,
love
do you
that
think Cameron's a
movie.
lock?
Yeah, I think Cameron's going to be a lock. And then
I
that
don't
fifth
think
slot's
Baz is
going
a
to.
lock.
You're not a bad choice with Todd Field, honestly. With Tar, because Tar is beloved.
I don't think Baz is. Don't get me wrong. I am rooting for Baz. I think Baz deserves to be there. I would love if come Oscar nomination day they say Baz Luhrmann.
It's like Kevin said. His fingerprints are all over it. It's like that's his style.
It's such a Baz Luhrmann movie, and I feel like, and he's been everywhere with it. It was.
I mean, all at once, so you could say.
Yeah. But I mean, like the Daniels. I think the Daniels are locked.
Oh, that's the other one I'm thinking of. That's right.
Oh,
That's the other one.
I think
forgot
That
about
was
also.
one you didn't mention.
They
So
are
of the
locked.
five, like who's the most likely to not hear their name come Oscar nomination day of the directors?
I think all five of them are in.
You think
Okay, so if you have Cameron, Spielberg, the Daniels, Martin McDonagh, and Baz Luhrmann, that leaves out Todd Field.
Yes,
They're all in.
I think
Todd
You think all
gets
five
in.
of those are in?
I think Todd gets in.
It replaces
And if Todd
Luhrmann.
gets in, he replaces. No, I would say that he replaces McDonagh.
No, McDonough's. I think McDonough's a lock.
Banshees is too beloved.
Yeah, Banshees is.
I'm not saying it isn't beloved, but is it a better directed? And this is where we get
Since
into the
when does that
intricacies
matter?
of direction, but like those other guys, Spielberg, Cameron, and let's not even, overlook the fact that there's controversy because no women directors were nominated this year. Sarah Polley got overlooked, and Gina Gina Prince Bythewood got overlooked, and there's a lot of other candidates who should be in the running.
I have what if Spielberg doesn't make it in? And then they put, because Fableman seems to have, again, we're talking box office. That doesn't mean quality, but Fableman's
Chatter too.
Fableman seems to, the chatter on that has lessened.
Yep. It's cool.
And I just wonder, do you think Spielberg gets bumped and they put in Todd Field? I mean, I can't imagine.
I don't think so.
There's no way,
not
right?
For
There's no
Fablemans.
way.
Not for Fablemans.
I mean,
No,
I'm
I don't think
just
so
playing
either.
devil's advocate here, but I'm just thinking of
and
we
you
all
can't
love
bump
the
the
Fablemans.
Daniels because I can see them bumping the Daniels saying you guys are young, you're going to get your shot. But that movie is them.
I mean, my God, that is the most directed movie of the year.
So Jake always brings this point up. Here's why I think Everything Everywhere All at Once to win Best Picture. It's definitely going to win editing. We know that.
I think
that
so.
movie is going to win editing.
I
And generally speaking, as Jake's pointed out, the combination of the editing award to Best Picture is pretty astounding. And I think Everything Everywhere All at Once, Everything Everywhere All at Once has everything. And here's why. It's a critical, but it's
everywhere.
It's literally at once. But think about it. It's not just a critical success and beloved by the Academy. It is a box office success and a massive hit. So it's almost like and a hit in terms of a film of that scale coming out and then actually gaining $100 million plus at box office plus whatever it's doing at home. That film to me feels like the perfect formula of a film that works for audiences, but also works for the Academy. And if they win editing, I think it's over.
And tell me that to further that Everything Everywhere All at Once doesn't fit the list of Best Picture winners recently. When you look at
Parasite
Moonlight,
and Coda.
Parasite, Nomadland, Coda,
Interesting.
Everything Everywhere All at Once feels
Coda
like
feels like a safe choice. Coda
Coda
feels
was
more
great,
like the,
Overpower the dog.
It's great. It's great. Power of the Dog's terrible.
Coda feels like a smaller
Not
choice
terrible.
is my thought.
Power
I
of the
just think
Dog's
everything
terrible.
everywhere all at once I keep saying it has it all. Like it's
Yeah.
and I think Avatar is going to be and we'll dive into this when we review it. I think Avatar is going to obviously be a huge success. It's probably going to cross 2 billion very easily. Just be considering if you watch Sean's interview about the number of 3D theaters that exist now versus the number of 3D theaters that existed in 2009, it's astounding. And China is going to be a gigantic box office for that movie. But I just feel like it's going to be that big movie versus I don't even want to call Everything Everywhere All at Once a small film. It's a $25 million film, which is, a pretty good budget. But compared to Avatar, which 300, 400 million, whatever the budget on that was, I don't know for sure. Definitely well over 200. I just think it's going to be an interesting thing.
We got to transition soon because I do want to ask you guys a question about the Avatar box office. And it's that, is James Cameron going to have 3 of the top 4 all-time grossing films?
Yes.
Wow.
Because first of all, think about it like this. Avatar 1 came out in 2009 and then basically essentially started that whole 3D craze for what we saw in that particular element. The number of theaters that exists now that are 3D capable, plus the ticket price hike that's happened since 2009, that movie's probably going to make $700 million this weekend worldwide. I mean, it's going to be.
Is it opening everywhere at the same time?
I think so. So Jake sent this tweet the other day that the movie could do 200 million alone in China this weekend.
Yeah. Wow.
And then if it does 150 to 175 here, maybe it does a $500 million this weekend worldwide.
Yeah.
I think 700 is a little ambitious, but I remember that movie opened up in 2009. There was a major snowstorm on the East Coast. Remember this, Sean?
Yeah.
And the box office suffered that first weekend.
It only did 70 that first
Right,
weekend.
only did 70 because the entire East Coast. You remember that?
Yeah, but I think Cameron said recently, he goes, I won't know how well this movie's going to do until week 4.
Oh, yeah.
The fourth weekend. Because he said, and he pointed out with the first Avatar, he said, we didn't come busting out of the gate.
Snowstorm.
People, it was word of mouth and repeat viewing, essentially.
But if it makes
people wanna go back and
$700
see.
million in the first 3 days, I think that's pretty
That's
easy
a
to be able to
different
kick
story.
back and go,
That's a different
we're
story.
good.
I will say this: I was on the air today, and I guess should we transition down to Avatar?
Well, let's take a break first. Let's take a quick ad
All right.
break, and we'll come back on the other side and start to review this week's movies, of which case Avatar: The Way of Water will be one of them. And we are back. Okay, so 2 big movies are opening this week. One is going to Netflix. The other one is going to every movie theater screen known to mankind. So we'll start with Bardo, False Chronicle of a Handful of Truths. And this is the new film by Alejandro Iñárritu, and it's following the pattern of some major filmmakers that we've been discussing the past couple of years who are making very heavy autobiographical films, and whether it be The Fabelmans or Roma by Alfonso Cuarón. I think I'm missing one too. Isn't there another one in there that was kind of a autobiographical?
Belfast.
Belfast for Kenneth Branagh, right?
I mean,
but it's structured the way that you would expect an Iñárritu movie to be structured. In which case, I mean, very bizarre. And it follows a character who is essentially supposed to be him, a documentary filmmaker who is wrestling with his next project, and that is very much about his associations with Mexico and his Mexican heritage. But the fact that he has to go to Los Angeles often for his work, and how he feels like he's torn in between the two places, and how is he raising his children? Is he raising them American? Is he raising them Mexican? The way that he's treated by his friends and admirers back home, and the way that he is wrestling with just a lot of the challenges that you would assume Iñárritu probably faced over the course of his career. It is a magnificent movie that I understand is not going to work for everybody. Because first off, it's very long. It's about 2 hours and 45 minutes. And there are chunks of it throughout while you're watching it, because he'll do something like this. He'll go down a pathway where he is all of a sudden the character feels like he's the child version of himself being lectured by his father, who has passed away. And he encounters him in a bathroom, like during a party that he's at. So he steps into the bathroom and he turns around and his father comes walking into the room. And you understand that his father has passed away because the guy is surprised to see him. And then over the course of their conversation, Inarritu shrinks the body of the character that you're watching, but keeps the size of his adult human head the same size. And he's like looking up at his dad, and his dad's trying to say to him, like, hey, you just got to make the right decisions moving forward and trust your gut and, go with the advice that I always said. But it makes it visually look like he's a child again. Like he's become a child again. He's listening to his father. And so he uses a lot of visual tricks to really convey, like, this is how I feel at this point in my thing. But he really doesn't mind digging into the issues that personally plague him. Like he'll sit in the back of a taxi cab and the guy will say, oh, are you in town for another movie? And he'll say, well, I'm kind of working on this one. And the guy will be like, oh, yeah, I haven't watched any of your other ones kind of thing, but I've heard that you're not that great of a director sort of thing. And you just these things you assume that filmmakers hear over the course of the thing. But like I was saying, there's chunks of time where you're sitting through where you're thinking to yourself, like, why am I watching this? Like, this is really navel gazing, where, you're losing me a little bit in this as you wander a bit. But by the end of this film, where he's going with it ties it all together in a way that just floored me. Like I was not expecting it to all come together the way that it did. And you all of a sudden understand the structure of the movie and you understand why you were lost throughout it the whole time and how it's coming back together and landing. And so ultimately I found it to be a really brilliant movie. I just pray that because it's on Netflix, that when people give it a shot, because I was lucky enough to see it on the big screen, that when people give it a shot, that they are willing to stick with it, because it is ultimately a wonderful, wonderful movie that I think is going to challenge some folk to get through if they're not totally plugged into what he's trying to do.
And a big thing that I thought was interesting that you told me was that I need to, because we're now in that point where we are putting the finishing final touches on our top 10 list. And you told me I need to see it before finalizing my top 10.
Oh, I think, and it's going to make mine.
Yeah.
It is going to make mine. I'm trying to figure out a time when I can potentially revisit it to find out 100% where it's going to go.
Well, Netflix this weekend. What are you talking about?
Well, it's just the time. It's just the time, unfortunately.
Oh, do you have a star rating for it? I know some people like star ratings.
I would go 4.5 out of 5.
Wow.
I'd go 4.5 out of 5. It's truly the main character gives an amazing performance. I wish I knew the actor's name. I don't recognize him from anything.
Pull it up.
Everybody who comes in around him is fantastic. And they all contribute really interesting components to the filmmaker's life, to the documentary filmmaker's life. There's a bit that takes place on a talk show where one of his best friends that he grew up with is questioning him heavily about the decisions that he's made throughout the course of his filmmaking career. And then Inarritu's standing character realizes that he can't speak for himself anymore. Like it's a lot of symbolism. It's heavy symbolism. And you understand that this is a filmmaker who's kind of exposing himself to, this is really how I feel. These are my emotions kind of laid bare. And some may find that pretentious, but I found it to be incredibly engrossing.
Also,
Gabe,
I want to say, oh yeah, Gabe, do you have the name? Sorry.
Daniel Jimenez Cacho, I believe is how you pronounce that.
He's terrific
Fantastic
in this movie. Yeah.
And what's interesting is that he was in Del Toro's movie Kronos.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And he, I believe this is the first Inarritu film shot fully in Mexico since Amores Perros, which I remember. Amores Perros was the first movie I saw of Inarritu's. I remember renting it at Blockbuster, and it just like blew my mind. But it was also a really hard movie that I'll never see again because of the dogs. There's some dog stuff in that film that's really tough. But he also, it's 21 grams as well. I mean, like he has a hell of a filmography. So I mean, Birdman clearly, but I mean, I'm all in.
I love Babel. I love Babel. I thought
Babel was great. Terrific. Yeah. I need to go back and watch 21 grams. I remember devastating me. Oh,
and then of course he wins for The Revenant, which I think I liked more than you guys.
I love The Revenant. Was my number one that year.
Was it really? Yeah. Oh, okay, good.
Love The Revenant.
It's terrific.
I like that film a lot. I like the way it's shot more than I like the story and the characters. I think it's really well done. Yeah.
Tom Hardy and Leonardo DiCaprio are really
Chivo shot the hell out of that movie. To me, Chivo's the star. So
And the bear. Also the bear.
Yeah.
All right, Jakey, why don't you kick us off with your thoughts on the new Jim Cameron film, Avatar: The Way of Water? Oh, I wanted to mention this too. If we get to this point with the Best Picture, do we think Avatar gets a Best Picture nomination?
Yes.
Do we think that Top Gun Maverick gets a Best Picture nomination?
100%.
Yes.
How about Glass Onion?
No.
Uh,
My argument is Knives Out didn't, and Knives Out I feel like had like more of the novelty to it.
Better
Yeah.
movie though. Better movie.
I like the first one better.
Did you?
I
just
love
like
the new one.
I think it would be
Love 'em
cool
both,
to see
yeah.
3 sequels in the Best Picture nominee. Okay,
Oh,
like, when's the
I
last time
mean-
3 sequels would have been in the
gonna
Best
happen.
Picture?
Glass
race.
Onion could get in there. I mean, with that 10. I have to look at all the lists. I mean, we already know for sure that
That's
like
terrific.
Tar will be in there, and like there's
You
a
say
lot
it's not
of.
good?
No, so it's
Did you
not
say-
getting in there. It's not getting in there.
Oh, I thought you said it's not
No,
good.
No,
I love
no,
Glass
Glass Onion.
Onion.
No,
He's
Glass
About to
Onion is great.
stop
It's not
recording,
getting in
and
there.
we were going to have to recast this
I think
podcast.
maybe like I think maybe it has a shot at maybe adapted screenplay or maybe Janelle Monáe for supporting actress, but I don't
Now
think it's getting in
that-
for
So,
picture.
do you want to know?
Janelle Monáe deserves a nomination. Her performance
sure.
in Glass Onion is incredible.
I would agree with that.
Right?
Do you want to
Oh.
know where Gold Derby has it at the moment in their Best
Sure,
Picture?
of course I
Where?
do.
Number
Yeah.
12.
Yeah, it's right on the cusp. Well, read the 10. I'm curious what the 10
Yeah.
are.
I'll start with 11 because I find it's interesting that this is above Glass Onion. The Woman King is
Really?
number 11.
I feel like Woman
Yeah.
King's been gaining
Yeah.
traction.
I
And
hope
it was
Woman
on.
King-
It was on what the AFI top 10. It was on the National Board of Review top 10.
And then
movie's
their,
awesome.
their top 10 at the moment are starting at 10 is The Whale, Elvis, Babylon, The Way of Water, Tar, Women Talking at number 5, Top Gun Maverick, Banshees, Everything Everywhere All at Once, and then The Fablemans at number 1.
I don't know if I
Interesting.
agree entirely with that.
It's
that
early.
list.
I think their list gets better as more comes
Sure.
out. So
Do
it's
you
early.
think, and Sean mentioned this earlier about the lack of female director nominees in the Golden Globes, do you think that there'll be a that will turn into nominations for the Oscars? Like, do you think that like Sarah Polley will get in or Gina Prince Bythewood? I mean, like there's, I mean, I would love to see Gina get in. I thought Woman King was
I would like to see-
outstanding.
I think Gina deserves a shot to get in. I'm not quite sure Woman Talking was directed well. Like it's, I don't.
See, I disagree. I actually
here's
would
where we're
take Sarah
nitpicking.
Polley
Over Gina?
over Gina just because I feel
Interesting.
like. I mean, I was captivated by Women Talking, and we're
Yeah.
literally talking about a movie in which like a group of people are sitting around a room, literally talking to each other, and for
Yeah.
2 hours I was in, and to me
Yeah.
that's direction. Like that's
Yeah.
how
Yeah,
she
you-
was able to direct that.
Yeah, direction. We like to think of direction as like showy shots and
Sure.
things like that, but like
And
the
that's where,
direction
like,
really
it
comes
gets
down
so-
to that
Yeah.
that aspect of it, and like making a really good solid film, even if it's in one space. Like The Whale is basically takes place in essentially
But we're
one
not
area.
talking about Aronofsky getting in.
Because he
At
ain't
all.
getting
Yeah.
in. He ain't getting in.
All right, let's get,
it is very good.
It is. Jake, The Way of Water.
Yes. I've been leading off my Avatar reviews with people around the newsroom or friends or family or whatever the case might be by reminding people that I don't particularly love the first one. You know, I think like everyone, I just recently went back and rewatched it for the first time in years in its entirety, and it was the most I liked it. But I still think it's bottom tier Cameron. I was not enamored or sucked into the world of Pandora when it initially came out 13 years ago, like everyone else seemed to be. I remember whenever it became the highest grossing film of all time, there was a part of me that sort of went, really? Like that movie?
Yeah.
That like I remember kind of being bummed that it beat Titanic because I love Titanic so much more than Avatar.
I mean, it is a better movie.
It is a better movie. That being said, I completely worship The Way of Water. Like there was a moment where just in my head, I just kept thinking like, welcome back, James Cameron. Like you, like everything about the film, I think is an infinite improvement. I think the story is so much better. I think, you know, now that sort of the world and the characters and the rules have already been established, we can just jump right into it and let's go. I do think that honestly, like I do think the script is, you know, we were just talking about before we start recording, some of the awkward lines and awkward line readings of the first one, and I didn't. To me, there were no like cringy moment. Granted, it's not like I don't think he's going to get an Oscar nomination for the script. I don't think the script has really like any major glaring issues. Cameron's never been. Like storytelling, yes, but script writing has never been. I don't even think he got a nomination for. I don't think Titanic got a screenplay nomination.
T2's a pretty good script, man.
But it's
come with me if you want to live.
It's a lot of great lines. But everything about Avatar, I just think it finally gave me the experience that I felt like everyone else was having for the first one except me. Finally, there was a moment where I was like, oh, I get it. Now I feel like now I see what all of you were going nuts about 13 years ago. I felt like as someone who does not love 3D, I was super into the whole 3D. I felt, not like a bit like things shooting out at you, but I felt when we were underwater, I was like, holy crap. It
depth
feels,
of field.
My God. Yeah. 100%. That's 100%. I just felt everything about it just had a texture to it. I just like the skin of the Na'vi. I feel like I know what their skin feels like. I feel like there are moments where when they emerge from the water and you can see the water running down their skin. I felt like I knew what it felt like for the water to run down their skin. Everything about it felt like it had a texture. It felt real. I felt completely immersed in this world. And it was just so oh my God. Okay. I totally get it now. And I found myself emotionally moved by the end. I was kind of into the characters and the final act is some of the best action I feel like I have seen in years and some top tier. And I feel like this is the ultimate glowing response. Top tier James Cameron action. That final act was a little bit Aliens, a little bit Avatar, a lot of bit Titanic, all kind of thrown onto Pandora. And honestly, whenever the film ended, for the first time in since the existence of Pandora, in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm ready for a sequel. Bring on the next one. I'm ready to go. When Avatar 3 starts ramping back up, I'm gonna be in. I'm 100% officially on board with the world of Avatar and Pandora now.
So here's why I think that I share your sentiment, as opposed to the first one. I care way more about the characters this time. And some people have said that it's really smart that he included kids and a family, that gave you more of an emotional component. And maybe that's what it is. Because if I try to think back truthfully to the story of the first Avatar, I was not invested in Jake Sully. I didn't necessarily care, who he was and whether he was going to connect with Neytiri. I didn't really know that much about the Na'vi, so I wasn't really invested in them as a species or a culture. And then, Stephen Lang is terrifying as a villain, but he's playing a one-note villain at this point. The stakes are raised emotionally in this one, to the point where, yes, that third act is truly, I think, the reason to go see the movie. Because I've been lucky enough to see it twice. I stayed behind and I watched the world premiere, and I will admit that there are some chunks through the middle that are very important to James Cameron, but extend the story probably a little more than they probably should. And they have to do with whales. There's a lot of whales.
A lot of whales.
A lot of whales.
A lot of whale eyeballs.
But that third act counts because you care about the characters. It's one of those deals, without giving anything away, where there's 4 different storylines happening and they are intersecting, and they're crisscrossing, and it doesn't matter which one he chooses to follow. You care. You're invested totally in what's happening on subplot A, subplot B, subplot C, and it's using it's Cameron's entire bag of tricks. You see bits of Titanic, you see bits of True Lies, you see bits of the Terminator franchise, you see all of it, but The Abyss specifically, all rolled into this incredible blockbuster. I will push back a little bit on what Jake said about anticipating the third one, but I'll explain why in the spoiler section. For now, Kev, I know you liked it as much as we did. What did we miss?
Yeah, first of all, a lot of questions. I've been getting a lot of questions on social media about how to watch this film in its proper fashion. So for people out there listening to our show, when you're buying tickets, in my opinion, the way it was shot, because he shot the film with 3D, this is not conversion. And honestly, one of the things I've been telling people who are like, I'm over 3D, I don't really want to put those glasses back on. I'm telling you, this is the guy who created a camera specifically with the original Avatar that is now filming a movie in 3D that is not converted. And so 3D is the key, one of the keys. The second one is high frame rate. So this film was shot with 48 frames per second, and then some of the scenes are 24 frames per second, which are double printed. To give it a perspective, and I'll keep this brief, I read somewhere one time that your eyes basically see the world if you were to put it into a frame rate ratio at around 60 frames per second. I don't know if that's 100% accurate, but it makes sense when I make this connection. Cinema movies have been projected at 24 frames forever, right? They've been shot 24 frames, projected 24 frames. So our mind looks at 24 frames per second as movie. That's why when you walk into, like, you put your TV on motion blur or whatever, it looks too real or too like jolting. It's because you're messing with the idea of what your mind thinks to be of film and cinema and storytelling. So we've seen filmmakers tackle the 48 frames per second before. Obviously, we saw it with what Peter Jackson did with The Hobbit, which I thought was an interesting experiment. I don't think anybody really loved it, but I found it interesting. And obviously, Ang Lee's played with the frame rates as well. But this time they've actually got it. And so if you think about it this way, if you think about 48 frames per second, that's closer to that 60 that I was talking about, right? And so it's closer to the real way your mind kind of computes life. So when you're in this state-of-the-art 3D experience at 48 frames per second, it's just jaw-dropping. And you are going to notice probably in the first hour these shifts in frame rates. You'll see it go from 48, which is like a super glossy, beautiful feel, to a little bit more of a jittery 24 frame double printed image. And Cameron and Landau talk about how the action scenes are really in that 48, and some of the more intimate dialogue goes back to the 24. Now, I want to quote Landau on this, because I thought Landau gave a really good example. So if you were to take a camera and go along a white picket fence left to right on screen, at 24 frames a second, depending on the speed you're going, you're going to get blur in between each of the pickets of the fence, because it's not picking up enough information for it to be a flowing shot. So a lot of the action in Avatar: Way of Water is a lot of shots that go left to right. And when you're in 48 and you're going real fast and you're dealing with real quick action, it looks unbelievable. There's no blur. There's no lag. So I know these are technical things, and I'm not saying this is what makes the movie great, but if you are going to go to a theater, I would see it 3D, look for the word high frame rate, or ask the theater if they have the high frame rate. They should. And I know a lot of theaters have the capacity. I'm seeing it in high frame rate tomorrow at an AMC. And then also Dolby. Dolby is the ultimate way to see it in terms of sound. There is an IMAX version. It was not shot with IMAX cameras. So I think the Dolby 3D high frame rate is the way to go, in my personal opinion.
There's some prints that don't have the frame rate?
Yeah, so you can see the film in 24 frames with now remember, these are digital prints. It's not projecting 24, but yes, you can see the film in 24 frames, non-3D if you want. That's totally fine.
Interesting.
And Landau even said that. He said it to me. He was like, if you're not a 3D fan or if the high frame rate, I'm paraphrasing him, there is options to see it outside of the 2D. Listen, I think people are going to be, it's going to blow people away from like a shocking standpoint. Like when you see this 3D in 48 frames, it is, you guys have seen it. It's pretty wild looking.
Well, the only thing I've seen with higher frame rate, the things that I've seen have stood out because of how weird it looks. Mm-hmm. And I guess the only credit I can give to this one is that when I went to the higher frame rates, I didn't notice the difference. It looked realistic. It still looked real.
Yeah, because you're in, and also, and again, this is so technical, but remember everything you're seeing. Obviously you're seeing a CG film with animation and everything, but these actors performed this, and they also mastered and got the underwater performance capture to work. Jake brings up a shot that is incredibly hard to pull off. A simple shot of a character coming out of the water requires two completely different setups in terms of like lighting, because basically you're dealing with the performance capture suit the actor's wearing underwater. They're coming up, and then you have to, I don't even know how to explain it. Because you're dealing with actors who are underwater. Like if you see an actor underwater swimming with fish, they're literally moving underwater in a performance capture suit that's picking up their action. And then we're then putting that to camera with CGI, or we're putting it to the screen with CGI. So it's not just a CGI character underwater. It's a actor doing it. And then they
it should be an animated feature. Is it an animated feature? Why isn't Avatar animated, but
No, it's
Marcel
live
the
action.
Shell is animated?
Because there's a lot of live action in Way of Water.
I don't understand why Marcel the Shell is animated.
I don't
remember like the first Avatar. There's a lot of live. See, to me, what's interesting about Avatar is when you jump back and forth between that live action world, and then in this one, you're really getting a lot of like Stephen Lang in the original. You get these interactions between the human live action characters. Remember, one of the lead characters in this film is live action. Spider.
Yeah, true.
And
yeah,
so that character is pivotal to this film, and he's live action. And then the whole world is, in the Na'vi and what were the name? What was the name of the Reef people? Like the Kate Winslet and Cliff Curtis. I'm trying to remember the name of the exact.
I will butcher.
Forgive me on that.
Here's the thing. I have kind of committed to the fact that I'm not going to learn the Na'vi
right.
nomenclature. I think Cameron is too far into his myth at that point, with the names of the different people and the names of the whales and the names of the different creatures. That loses me when we start to get into that. I get lost. I still look at the certain characters. I'm like, well, there's teenage Sigourney Weaver and there's maybe Kate Winslet. We didn't know
it's
Kate
a little bit
Winslet's
harder
character.
than. Well, okay, so here's the question though: why do we know all the Star Wars creatures? But we don't know why do I know what I mean? Granted,
this is the second Avatar out of like 20 Star Wars things.
But like Sean, like what a tauntaun is, or what a bantha is.
You bet your ass I know what a tauntaun is.
I actually don't know. I've seen all. I don't even know what those are. In all honesty, though, so after all that technical stuff I just said, is the movie good? This is what I've been saying all along. Like the first film was technically brilliant because of what he was able to do, but the story and the script to me were just lacking. It didn't feel like the same heart that went into the tech went into the story. This time it's equal. And like the beauty of watching this film is that you think about your brain almost like a 3D camera. So like you have, I don't know how this camera operates on this new one, but think about one lens with two cameras left and right? And think about your mind kind of like that. So if you're watching Avatar: The Way of Water, you can go in between the tech and the story and never get lost in the immersion. Like for me, anytime I wanted to check out for a second and just look at the spectacle of what I was watching, that was a way for me to like check out, not in a bad way. I check out, go back in. But I'm immersed in the story. So it's like at the same time, he wrote a really compelling story. There's some exposition and some story. I think the middle is a little bit long. There's some repeat sequences that happen, but as you guys said, the third act pays off. But I think it's an incredible cinematic achievement, and I think I'll tell you right now. I was on the air today telling my anchors about the high frame rate, and I've been getting a lot of texts from friends who are like, "How do I find this?" So if you have any questions, you can tweet us. Tweet me specifically. I did this with like a lot of the Nolan
tweet
films.
Kevin.
No, but when Nolan put out like Interstellar, when he put out Interstellar and Dunkirk, I asked people to tweet me their zip codes so I could find them a 70mm IMAX theater. This won't be hard to find a high frame rate theater. Most theaters, I believe, in the country are going to be equipped to play it like this. I just don't know what that means for projectors and things, but just look for the words high frame rate, 3D, and Dolby, and that'll be your ultimate way to see it. And if it makes you feel weird watching the frame rate, just go to a standard showing. But I think the high frame rate here, as you guys all pointed out, it works. It works really well.
If the frame rate bothers you, why don't you go see Puss in Boots instead? Okay, take your butt over to Puss in Boots.
But also, you have to remember,
don't knock Puss in Boots. You're not better than Puss in Boots.
You're seeing something you've never seen before. So give it a chance. Like it's gonna be weird. Like you're gonna sit there. I even looked at Jake in the first 15 minutes. I was like, dude, this seems strange, right? You see it, they're cutting back and forth between the 48 and the 24 double printed, and he's like, I didn't even notice it. But I'm like, but I think it is a little jarring. But give your mind, as Sean said, give your mind time, because you're basically watching something that's never been done before, at least at this scale and this level and the performance capture and everything. To think back to Andy Serkis's early work on motion capture and to go where we are now with the performance capture we are dealing with here.
Imagine where we're going to be in 10 more years.
It's pretty wild. It's
when Avatar 3
wild.
Comes out. All right, why don't we transition into some spoilers, minor spoilers. So if you haven't yet seen the film and you want to be protected by everything, then fast forward to the James Cameron blend section of the podcast at this point. But I'll start because I just want to push back where Jake was saying when we got to the end of this movie that he was looking forward to part 3. I was a little concerned because the last thing that happens in the movie is Jake Sully essentially saying, hey, we're water people now. This is our home. And this is where we're going to make our stand. Well, like that worries me because I thought that's what they've been doing for the past 2 movies. Like, haven't they been making their stand? Like, is part 3 going to be like an all out war? And if so, why? Because like the driving point of this movie, this story was we want to get Jake Sully, right? Like I kind of joked to both of you guys that like, damn, they really hated Jake Sully in this movie. They spent a lot of money to go get him. And that was the driving narrative, right? So I kind of thought that part 3 was going to be its own story separate. And that last line worried me at all. Did it not strike you guys that way?
The thing that worried me, not even so much worries that like, I mean, I want every new Avatar movie to take me to a different part of Pandora or like even like a different, like I'd love it because Pandora is a moon to a bigger planet. So I've kind of been wondering like what that bigger planet is like. So for me, it was less the concern of like we're starting our war now and more the concern of like, oh, like, are we just going to stay in the water area of Pandora? Like, is that all? But I don't think that that's going to be the case. I have a feeling that like James Cameron is going to give us completely new experience for part 3 as he did for part 2. I highly doubt he's content with staying there. I think we're going to see areas of Pandora we've never seen before.
I think so too. I think he's even teased like there are like cold weather type or mountain type.
Oh, that's cool.
Locations of Pandora that they could explore.
Oh sure. Man, snow.
Oh, I would say snow's a cool
mountain snow 3D with the 4D frames. Yeah, that'd be sick.
It'd be really, really cool. And then of course there are a bunch of questions that weren't answered, which I think is okay. Like I think it's still interesting to keep the mythology going. There's a lot of questions about who Sigourney Weaver's character's father is at this point.
Right.
I still don't fully understand with Stephen Lang's character of why you can't just consistently reboot him. Like, to me, and maybe I just missed it. It feels like they have his in that exposition dump that we were talking about.
Yeah.
He says essentially, we have your brain waves,
right,
and your personality, and we want to transition it into an avatar now.
Right.
But if that avatar were to die, don't they just have the backup? Don't they just have his brainwaves?
I mean, theoretically, that would be okay. So one of the big questions that people are wondering is how is Stephen Lang back? He died in the first one. So that to what Sean just said, essentially, they're uploading his consciousness to an avatar. So again, if I understand the rules of this properly, I believe, So and I guess we're in spoiler territory. So Quaritch,
people are listening,
obviously,
they've seen it.
He lives in this one. But yeah, theoretically, I guess if the avatar body were to die, they could re-upload it to a different avatar. Though I don't know, how much time that would take to build his new avatar. But then also maybe that becomes a plot point in the newer ones where they have to break into the human facility and take his consciousness and unplug him or so. I don't know how that would like become a thing. But it's an interesting point because, and one thing I will say about this film, which really works, is that dynamic between Spider and him is really fascinating. Yeah, like it's a really and it's a push pull that works. It's earned, like that emotional idea, especially when that scene when he has the knife it's towards the third act and essentially Spider, not forgives him but understands like there's still a connection. That stuff was interesting. Like that was really interesting.
He essentially
emotion.
Saves him. Like Jake Sully let him sink to the bottom of the ocean and Spider saves him.
Right. And then to the Sigourney Weaver thing, which is interesting. Yeah. So obviously she died in the first one. This character she's playing here is new. It's we believe it's the daughter, right?
It's the daughter that was spawned from Sigourney Weaver's avatar, because Sigourney Weaver had an avatar at the end of the first movie.
But couldn't the father then be Joel David Moore, who also was an avatar? I think
that was a throwaway line. I mean, I never got like that film never implied. I mean, and also my interpretation of what's happening because of her connection to the world around her. Because when Sigourney Weaver died, she was kind of enveloped by that tree and that world and kind of the life force. So I think that has something to do. I think it would be way too simplistic to try to imply that like, oh, these two characters were actually having a relationship at that time, because he just met her right when the first Avatar started.
It's also watching it through the second time. Yeah, they had just met. That's true. Very much so. Watching it through the second time, there's far more emphasis on her character. Is it Kiri? Kiri?
Yeah.
Is that what
The younger character. Yeah. Yeah.
She adapts much faster to the water creatures and the nature underneath the water than the rest of the Sully family, essentially.
Her scene when she's exploring the water for the first time is one of the most magical sequences I've ever. It's such a beautiful scene.
And later, when she's able to command those light creatures and create a path for her family to follow out, like the movie is telling you she has a lot more power, and connection to this world than the other characters.
Could it be an immaculate conception thing?
Could be the tree.
Is that a stupid question?
No, that's honestly that's kind of how
that's
kind of how I interpreted it. To be honest, like that's kind of.
Like there's no father.
I don't think that there's like a legitimate like Sigourney Weaver was having a secret Avatar sex relationship with someone that we never found out about. I mean, at this point, you can't, because it's already a surprise that Stephen Lang's character had a son. You can't keep telling us that all these people had secret relationships and sons and didn't know about it.
Yeah.
All right, we'll dive into more spoilers because to me those are the two biggest questions that we had that I wanted to get across here. How is Quaritch back, and how is Sigourney Weaver's character? But other than that we'll save more of our deep dive into other things and theories, and we want to hear from you guys, and we know Gabe's seeing it tonight, so we'll have Gabe chime in on the spoiler side of things once he sees it too. Because I'm interested. These are all interesting questions, but like going back to what I was saying in the review. The emotion works here really well, and a lot of it has to do with that spider character in Quaritch. Like to me, those are the two. Like that's a very, very impactful part of the film.
And Zoe Saldana's performance.
Oh my god! There is a scene again. I'm out of spoilers now. I'm gonna be vague. There's a scene with Zoe where she makes a face that will haunt me forever. Like I cannot stop thinking about her eyes.
She's
in
great.
that.
If she had more to do, scene. I would argue we should be talking about her as a best actress contender. But I just feel like she kind of takes a much more of a back seat in this one than I thought she was going to.
Until she doesn't. She is a badass in that third act, man. Woo.
All right, let's throw to one more ad break, and we'll come back with James Cameron blend on the other side. All right, and we're back. This week's blend game is hashtag James Cameron blend. I'm going to let Kevin go first. He's our Cameron guy.
Kevin doesn't even like James Cameron.
Yeah.
Did we make T2 off the board for him, or is T2? Oh, we took T2 off the board.
We're mentioning T2 as like that is the obvious pick. So what's the other?
Not the obvious pick though.
Well,
my pick. I like. Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, T2 clearly is my pick, but I'm going True Lies because it's so when I was a kid, when I saw Terminator 2, I was 8, and if I'm not mistaken, True Lies was right after it, like a year or two after T2. Was it 94, 95? I could be wrong. Jake, you know the time. Yeah. Right. So when I saw True Lies, I was in full Arnold mode. Like that, he was everything. Like back then, Terminator 2 changed my whole life in terms of like my love for films. But then I went back and like found Predator and freaking Red. What's the movie he called? It was with Jim Belushi. Come on. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. Anyways, then there was like Conan the Barbarian and like all those great movies. Someone let me know about the name of that movie. That Red movie. Anyway, so True Lies came at a time in my life that was the perfect moment. It was also the same director as Terminator 2. It made
Red Sonja.
No. There's another one. Not with Jim Belushi. There's like a buddy cop comedy where Arnold's a Russian.
Is it Red? Maybe I'm wrong.
No. It's.
What is the name of that movie? All right, I'll look it up later.
I'll look now.
All right. So True Lies came at a time in my life when Red Heat. So T2 came, or True Lies came at a perfect time. So I was all in on that style of writing and that action and that comedy and Arnold and kind of like the opening scene when he's in the ice and he comes up and he does the tango and then like there's that whole thing with him and Tom Arnold. They're so funny together in the film. I also thought it was a really clever idea. I loved the concept of a true lie. I thought it was like a really smart idea. And I know it's been done in movies before, but like, and then Jamie Lee Curtis's character having this want to be, have adventure, yet her husband's the most adventurous person on the planet. And then Bill Paxton is hilarious in the film. Just a great performance from him. And honestly, like that film, like that, we talk about bathroom scenes, like jokingly, but like the Mission Impossible Fallout scene is iconically great, but the True Lies bathroom fight is freaking awesome. When he puts that guy's head in the urinal and says "cool off," I mean, it was just like so perfect. And like, thing that Cameron
did it better. Martin Lawrence did it better in Bad Boys.
Does he do a cool off line?
He hits the guy into the urinal. He does have a line. God, I can't remember what the line is. It's terrific.
But anyways, like in terms of this, it was all I wanted and more from another James Cameron film. Also, I have a lot of memories of that movie. My parents, with T2, they wouldn't let me see it until it came out to VHS. Same thing with True Lies, but they let me watch True Lies, but everything except for Jamie Lee Curtis's dance scene, and I never understood that. I'm watching all this violence, all these like guns going off. Also, the bridge scene in True Lies is amazing. So that whole scene when the bridge is out. And like, I mean, it's just awesome. And then like, you know, obviously it all comes down to Arnold saying you're fired, which I think is just it's such a perfect one-liner and it's so great. But again, you know, it's interesting because like T2, I think is overall the better film, but True Lies has always had a special place in my heart. And I love Aliens and everything he's done. But True Lies was like, it came at a time in my life where I was just hungry for that style of filmmaking, that like, and it was shot masterfully. It was beautifully shot. It was shot right here, and some of it was shot right here in DC. So I love True Lies. That and if you can't find it anywhere. I guess it's streaming on Hulu. But
with commercial breaks.
If we ever get James Cameron on the podcast, I need to ask him, because right now we don't have a 4K release Blu-ray of Avatar.
I've had a lot of people tweeting me why we didn't ask about 4K.
I know. I didn't have time.
Like, we only had 4 minutes.
I know. But so right now there's no currently a 4K Blu-ray of Avatar, no 4K Blu-ray or Blu-ray of True Lies or The Abyss. Aliens doesn't have a 4K. Titanic doesn't have a 4K. The only 4Ks you can get for James Cameron films, from what I understand, is Terminator 2, maybe Terminator 1.
But he said The Abyss is coming.
The Abyss is coming.
Yeah.
I think his answer would be, there are shots in those films I don't want people to see in 4K, because I think he's really protective of like his older imagery. And he's like, I've seen him talk about that before. So that could be part of the reason he wants to go back through, because on the T2 Blu-ray, they went back in and they put Arnold's face in some of the stunt shots.
I hate that. I hate that.
That didn't bother me. That didn't bother me.
Keep it the way it was.
Because but when you're in 4K and you're watching Arnold jump off that thing into like the water duct area, whatever it is, like you can see the stunt guy's face. Back then they would have replaced it anyways. But so to me, that's not a Han Greedo thing. That's just a digital replacement to make it
guns to walkie-talkies. That's guns to walkie-talkies.
No, it's not. All you're doing is replacing the stunt face with the actor who's the characters in the scene. It's not, doesn't change the narrative.
I agree with Kevin. That doesn't bother me. That to me, that's
Han and Greedo changes the whole course of Han's character.
That changes.
So that's different. Yeah.
But I like the nostalgia touch of Arnold, not Arnold.
I think the rule should be, if the technology were available at the time, would Cameron have done it? And I think he would have.
What do you think about this? What do you think about this rule? If you're going to re-release like an at-home version that has that, should you also give me the original that I saw when I grew up?
But then was it like there's going to be like on the DVD menu, it's going to say like theatrical and face version?
What did they call it? What did the fan made the despecialized Star Wars version? Did you ever see those? You could get
despecialized.
Online. Yeah, someone went back in and they stitched together.
Hey, do you know who never needs their face replaced? Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise in every shot.
Depends what you
every shot.
I mean,
all right, Jake. Where'd you go?
I'm going with Aliens. And I'm going to keep this pretty tight because I want Gabe to get to Avatar. But the Xenomorph is my favorite cinematic monster. I just think it is like the most beautiful, crazy ass, terrifying, perfectly constructed monster in movie history. And obviously, by no means did James Cameron create the Xenomorph or create Ellen Ripley or create LV-426. But what he did with it, I mean, he expanded this world into this basically the plot is let's go back. But like he goes back and just, as simple as it is, like adding more of them. And usually that's like, there's so many aspects of what he does with Aliens that are the cliche, lazy aspects of what make most sequels suck. Like, we're just going to go back to the same place. You liked that one thing, we're going to give you a bunch of those things. But he takes it and just absolutely runs with it. And also like the tangible feel of the xenomorphs in this. Like, it genuinely feels like we're on the planet. The action is there. All of the characters, while both like stock military characters, all feel like they have their own dimensions and personality. And I feel like I sort of know each one, and like all leading up to like the fight with the Queen Mother. And, you know, and I told James Cameron this and Sigourney Weaver this, which is that like, you have to a certain degree, kind of feel bad for her, because if you look at the story through her perspective, like these are her kids, and these random ass aliens to her are coming to her planet.
I'm with you. I always felt
like
bad.
destroying. You do have to like kind of be, you know, like it's, you know, and she screams when she starts like when Ellen Ripley starts burning the eggs and burning like the others, she's screaming, and like that actually like, and to me like that was haunting. I loved that, and I honestly still think and I'd be curious to do really quick what everyone's favorite Cameron shot is. I think my favorite Cameron shot is that moment where they lose Newt. And Newt falls into the water and stands, and she's in that tunnel that's kind of like halfway water. And all of a sudden the alien, the big, tall xenomorph stands up behind her in the water. And like rewatching for the people at home, I split my lip and I'm like gushing blood right now. So I apologize. So I'll quit talking really quick. That is my favorite.
In Chicago.
It is very cold in Chicago. That is my favorite Cameron shot. And I gotta give the edge to Aliens.
All right. Well, you're both wrong. The answer is Titanic. It's the best
I
movie.
love Titanic.
It's the best movie he's ever made.
Whoa, wait.
Because if I were to pick best, I would pick T2.
No.
Come on.
Titanic
You
is better.
sleep on
Titanic
T2.
is better than T2. I don't
It's
sleep
not
on
better
T2.
than T2.
Titanic is a better movie than T2.
But
It is a more complete film. This man recreated the ocean liner. And not only that, he found it. No, he didn't find it, but went down to the bottom of the ocean to shoot footage at it.
Great movie. Great movie.
Used that to transition into this deft recreation of the Titanic, you know, in its heyday. Wrote, again, like you say, stock characters. The rich girl who's misunderstood, you know, the bullish fiance, played so beautifully by Billy Crudup.
Billy Zane.
Billy Zane, thank you very much.
Billy Zane's fantastic in Titanic.
He's really good.
Why didn't he blow up after Titanic like everyone else did?
Should have been Billy Crudup, shouldn't it?
It's such a hated character.
Billy
Like
Crudup.
and he's like that perfect character that
What's
like
his name? Cal.
Yeah, he's like perfectly hateable.
Yeah.
Like
you know that moment he flips the table as ad lib?
He's content to be an idiot. He's content to be an asshole.
He's such a piece of crap.
I made a great joke at the Avatar junket because by the time the hallway was packed with journalists and I was being led down to one of the rooms at the end by the handlers who were taking me from hospitality to go interview Kate Winslet, and we were getting stopped up, and I said, "I have a child," and I figured everybody would clear out of the way. It's such an awful thing for him to say.
I will say though, when the band is playing when the ship's going down, that gets me every time. That's
it's
great
tremendous.
scene. Oh.
But we're sleeping on DiCaprio, you know, being the most charming rogue that could ever be. One of the greatest transitions, I'm not sure if it's greatest shot, but greatest transitions is when DiCaprio hands Rose the note that says meet me at o'clock, and then she meets him, and then he says, "Do you want to go to a real party?" And it's the Irish having a time of their lives in the below deck. Scene. The way that the movie has commentary on the haves and the have-nots, and how when the boat starts to sink, the people who are below deck are essentially told, "You're fend for yourself, you're on your own," kind of thing. You will see in Avatar: The Way of Water that James Cameron loves handcuffing people to poles. He cannot get enough of it.
As the ships are sinking.
As ships are sinking. It's everything. It's everything. I mean, like, if you go back and think about the amount of work that went into making Titanic because of how practical it is, and I'm pretty sure I've told this story a million times before, but like, I read that story of the extra who tumbles down the deck into the water because they're elevating the ship. And then Cameron calls cut, and then they lower it back down to where it was, and they dry off everything that was dry before the shot started, and the extra has to change out of his wet clothes and reset to back to where he is. And this is why everybody looked at him filming in Mexico on this set and just said, this is going to be Cleopatra. This is going to be a disaster. It's going to tank the studio, essentially. And it didn't. It did the complete opposite. And so Titanic will forever be my favorite movie by James Cameron, unless somehow he gets out of Pandora and decides to do something else that's highly original. But,
I did see something just a little while ago about like Avatar 5, like bringing Neytiri to Earth. That would be really interesting. Like get the like have I don't know where I read that. I don't know who to give credit for, but apparently Cameron talked about this idea of like bringing the characters to Earth somehow, which I think would be fascinating.
And it's Earth like 1984.
The fight, are they gonna fight Thanos? Is that the idea?
Oh, dude, could you imagine? That would be amazing.
All right, audience picks. Carter, Rabasa, Carrie Vanderberg, and others said Aliens. Jaleese went with Titanic. Rachel Ho said True Lies. Nosferatu. Hello, Nosferatu. Thank you for watching the show.
Is this Willem Dafoe's Nosferatu, or is this
God, I love that movie
The
so much.
character based on.
And Dino Paulo, Harry Lichtman.
Did you say Nosferatu's pick? Sorry, I didn't hear.
The Abyss. He went with The Abyss.
Fitting.
He lives in a subterranean coffin underneath.
He just comes up and goes, The Abyss, and then goes,
The Abyss. My blend beak. Why am I? What accent is that? I have no idea. Dino Paulo, Harry Lichtman, Matt Caron, and many, 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 many others went with T2 Judgment Day. So thank you everybody for participating. Next week, we're gonna have some fun talking about hashtag Damien Chazelle Blend. Patron saint of the ReelBlend podcast has a movie coming out called Babylon. And we will debate what we think is our favorite films by him. So let us know your pick via email at cinemablend.com. Or you can use the hashtag Damien Chazelle Blend on social media. Real quick through the outro. Thank you guys very much for leaving us reviews. Sign up for the premium. There's information in the here where you can see the description below for how you can sign up for premium episodes. You know where to find us on social media. We'll be back next week with a full-on show, and we're coming up close to our top 5 episode where we give you our top 5. Gabe, is that next week?
No, it's in 2. Oh. Well, it's in 2 weeks. Yes, it's in 2 weeks.
Well, it's coming up. So subscribe.
Our last episode of the year.
And in the meantime,
Oppenheimer.
Hashtag Finchfax.
Cow feces. No.
Elephant feces.
Elephant feces.
God,
in 35
get the
millimeter.
animal right.
Finchfax.